So Luke Ablett, welcome to downtown Footscray. Got the famous name. Tell us about that Ablett Christmas.
There were not so much footy but huge games of cricket, which always started with the kids. Always started with the boys, and then the girls would get involved, and then late afternoon the uncles would get involved, and we all got kicked off, and they'd had a few drinks and things got a bit serious, and the real cricket balls came out, and very, very fond memories of those hot Christmas lunches back in the country.
And where was that exactly?
Mostly was at our place down in Warragul. I grew up in Druin, went to school, played footy in Druin. We kind of moved out to Warragul, which is basically next door, when I was younger, and then yeah, we had a couple of acres with a big flat area at the back where all the cricket and footy got played. Occasionally it was at Tucks in Berwick, which was a bit of a shame because there wasn't as much space, so we were always, I guess as kids we were always hoping that it would be at our place, but yeah, it was great. We had plenty of space.
And of course then there's the Tuck connection. Can you explain that to us?
Dad's sister Faye married Michael Tuck, so then there was Tucky, and then his two boys Shane and Travis obviously played a lot of footy, and their sister Renee was a really good netballer as well. So yeah, very, very sporting family, I guess.
So you got this great sporting blood. What about the competitive element? Was that in the Ablett family as well?
I know as kids, you know, we always just played it as kids, but we joke about it now, but seriously, when the uncles came into play later on, so his dad, Gary, and all the brothers, 5 brothers, it was like they were looking for one-upmanship. You know, they were steaming in, they were hitting them over the fence, and you know, the kids were left to jump the fence and go and pick the ball-ups out of the cow paddock. I was one of 5 cousins playing AFL footy at one time, and then Dad and Gary and Tucky and all those. So to have that level of success, I mean, there has to be a level of competitiveness that's either genetically passed down or you learn that that's how you're going to survive. So
it's clear, Luke, that education's been important to you as well. Where did you finish your high schooling?
The most public of public schools. I think it was $140 to send your first kid there, and every kid after that was voluntary if you couldn't afford it. So it was very, you know, it was the old Druin High School. You know, it was, I think looking back now, it was really low socioeconomic. Probably the things that we look at as now as being disadvantaged, and a lot of really poor kids and a lot of kids from disadvantaged groups. But you know, we managed to do pretty well.
So Luke, during those high school years, was footy something you thought you might do as a profession?
I never pictured myself being an AFL footballer. I think, and this is not really based on anything, but having Gary as being Gary, AFL football was kind of normalised in a way. It wasn't some far off universe that this amazing thing. We saw the troubles that Gary had with being famous and all that kind of stuff, and it was very normal for us as a family to go and watch Gary and to go and talk to him, and Dad played and Jeff played in 2 flags and did all these kind of things. So I guess in a way playing AFL wasn't the amazing thing that a lot of other people think it was, and I guess we kind of learnt that along the way.
So Luke, so many kids have this great love of the game when they're young. Did you have that?
I loved playing it, 100%. We'd play it all day, every day. I remember one year I'd play under 15s in the morning, I'd run the boundary for the under 17s, I'd have some lunch during the reserves and run water for the seniors at Druin, and we loved it, and I was, you know, 14 or 15.
Did you end up playing a senior game for Druin? 99,
Dad coached. I got invited to go down to Gippsland Power in the under 17s, and Dad took the coaching role and didn't let me go. And I remember the coaches from Gippsland ringing Mum and Dad going, "What are you doing? You know, it's going to affect his development, and it's going to have all these impacts." But you know, and I was a bit upset at the time, but looking back, I played a year of senior footy when I was 16. You know, there were players who have played AFL footy at 16, so it's not that amazing, but you know, the chance to play against senior bodies and get used to that, but also the protection of, you know, Dad's on the sideline kind of thing, so I didn't get targeted. And
yeah, so footy was an option. What did you have on standby in case that didn't work out?
Footy wasn't the be-all and end-all, and I think there are some real challenges for the AFL system in preparing kids that footy isn't everything, and there is a chance that you won't make it, and if you don't make it, what are you going to do? And I think a lot of people talk that talk, but they don't necessarily action it a lot of the time, and I think it's a real challenge having kids who their whole life from the time they're 15 is targeted at getting into the AFL system, and if that doesn't happen, what are they left with? I think that's a real challenge. But for me, I was lucky for a whole range of reasons that uni was always something I wanted to do. I always wanted to move to Melbourne and kind of see what else was outside of Druin and the Warragul area.
So once you were into this AFL system, what did you love about footy the most? And what did you struggle with?
Like any footy club, it's the people who make it, the players that you play alongside make it for you. And we were really lucky, I think, as time went on and we had that really good period in the the mid-2000s. It was just such a solid group of friends who knew each other for a really, really long time, who travelled with each other for a really long time and knew each other so well that, it just becomes this life that's really easy and it looks after itself, and there's no, kind of bullshit that goes on alongside it because you all get along so well. But the thing that I really struggle with the most is the idea, and I think a lot of people subscribe to it, is that if you're a footy player, that's all you are. I was really interested in going to see bands on a Tuesday night because my favourite band was in town. Some friends and I started this little newsletter where we'd all do pieces of writing and we'd just send it out amongst our mailing list amongst our friends, and all these other little bits and pieces that don't really promote any kind of professional development or anything, but the idea being if you went and saw a band on a Tuesday night, you're compromising your football preparation. I just think that's crap because and footy clubs focus so much on the physical element and almost completely forget the mental. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. And you can't, in many ways, separate footy from the rest of your life. It's so interlinked. So to have those opportunities where you can not be the football player and go and see a band or go and do whatever, and things that aren't necessarily normally associated with footy were so valuable to me. But every time I went and did them, I felt guilty because I was letting myself down, I was letting the team down, and then I wasn't playing well because I was unhappy and all these other things, and it just became this real burden. And that was the thing that I look back on with a real frustration, is you have to be this narrow little box of a person to be respected and to be seen to be dedicated, and if you step outside of those, then you're not dedicated. I just think there are people who that's true for, who go and get drunk and whatever because they aren't dedicated, but for the vast majority of players, they just need that balance, and I don't think footy provides that all the time, and it's really detrimental to their footy.
Now, from a football perspective, who would you say influenced you considerably in those early years?
Key player in my career is Paul Williams. He just did this thing where you could talk about footy, but he'd also invite me around to his place for tea and I'd have dinner with his wife and his 2 daughters, and it became much more than just, we're here to play footy. We're mates, let's hang out, let's get to know each other, let's do all these other things. And it was great because it allowed him at time, when he said, this is what you need to, this is what you're not doing well enough, this is what you need to get better at, I knew that it wasn't through any kind of animosity or any kind of anger. It was like, he's a guy who cares about me, who wants me to get better, who'll go into bat with the coaches for me, who'll do all these things for me as a person, and that kind of helped my footy. So I have a lot to thank to him. And then the other one is Ross Lyon, for very similar reasons. Even though he was a coach, he was kind of infatuated by the Ablett name and all that kind of stuff, as a lot of people are. But you go in and talk to Rossi, you ask him a really quick question on the way out before you go home, and you sit there talking about my grandfather logging up in the back hills of Gippsland, and what, that mum's father played 200 games for Drew and won 4 premiership, 4 best and fairest, and you just end up talking about all these other things, and had to argue him for an hour as to why I couldn't do uni this semester, because he was like, you have to do uni, and you had those relationships where people legitimately cared about you.
So you were at Sydney during a really strong time, great club culture developing, made the 2005 grand final. What are your memories of that grand final?
Look, I don't remember much of it. There's obviously a couple of incidences. I remember quarter time and I was playing on Judd and he had about 15 touches, and I just happened to be on the wing where the huddle was, and Roosie and I just stood there and I was like, he's going to spray me in a second. He didn't say anything. Then there's kicking it to Cousins in the goal square.
I was in the crowd that day, Luke, and I can tell you that there were a lot of people on your side, because after that mistake, everyone thought, how's this bloke going to live with this for the rest of his life?
I don't know, what do you say? It's just a monumental up. But to be completely honest, I'm far more embarrassed and spend more time thinking about how poorly I played in that game, which I did. I had 2 or 3 touches. Judd had a field day, won the Norm Smith. I feel far more guilty and spend more time thinking about the whole game, and this isn't some deflection away from that moment, as bad as it was, I feel conflicted about even watching and talking about that game because of the way that I played, not because of that moment. Maybe that's just a protection mechanism as well, I'm not sure. But yeah, I do feel really embarrassed about the way I played. It was shocking.
You had that great team triumph, Luke, but what about moments during your career of individual triumphs, things that you look back on, reflect on and say, yep, that was an important moment for me, that was something I feel really good about?
I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful or minimise what winning a premiership means, but it's not what I most value about my career. What I most value is how hard I trained, how much I sacrificed, the amount of hours I spent injured and working, as does everybody. But there was a couple of times, I know at the end of 2003 I was about to get delisted. I'd played 8 games in 3 years and I was really struggling and did all these things, and I can honestly say that for 3 or 4 years I reckon I was one of the hardest trainers at that club, in a club renowned for its work ethic. And I can kind of hang my hat on those things, I wouldn't say I was an integral part, but I was part of the creation of the Bloods culture and all the bits that went with that. There's a lot of crap that goes with that as well, but the good bits, I'm really proud of the role I played in creating a really great club environment. I was only young when that happened, but I feel like I played a part. So they're the things that I look back on most proudly. The way that I conducted myself on the field. I think a lot of people understood that I wasn't the most talented person. I was never going to win the Brownlow medal, but absolutely they wanted me to play. Coaches, players, medical staff, and that's what I'm proudest of. The fact that for 3 or 4 or 5 years I was an integral part of a really good footy team, and that's what I look back on.